And in Bridge, we're going to open the Elephant PSD. And go ahead and make it a little bit bigger on your screen. All right, so our goal here is to puppet work this elephant, make him appear to be walking in a different way. We're going to change the stacking order of the puppet pins so that his tail can wag in front of him and or behind him. Not and, or behind him. So the first thing that we want to do is, in this case, we're going to work on a duplicate layer. So down at your background layer, there's 100 ways of doing this, but Command J is the shortcut that duplicates the layer that you're on. So let's just do that. And then from here, he's already done the hard work of selecting the elephant, putting the marching ants around, and saved it as an alpha channel. So we can go up to the Select menu, and then down to Load Selection, and anything that has been saved in the channels, in the strap-down box, will show up here. He's already done that for us and called it Elephant, so if we click on that and say OK, we have the marching ants around our elephant, and we don't have to do any work. So thank you for doing that. All right, we have our elephant selected. So we're going to come down to our Layers panel, and we're going to click on the Add Layer Mask button. And that's going to mask out everything but the selection. So it adds that mask. We see the elephant's white, and we see the rest of the background has been masked out. Now nothing looks different because we have that exact same duplicate under it, but if we turn off the visibility of that layer, you can see that the elephant is perfectly masked out. Okay, it's still underneath there. All right, layer 1, let's rename that because that's a layer that gets confusing. We're going to call this one Puppet. It's going to be the one that we're going to manipulate. We're going to turn off the visibility of our puppet layer and turn the visibility of the background back on. Yep. From here, with the marching ants, you go down and click on the Yep. So turn off the puppet layer, which is the masked layer, and only have our background layer, and then also actively be working on the background layer. Make sure that that's the one that's highlighted, because if you try to do this and your other layer is active, even though it's turned off, we don't see it, there's nothing there to work with. All right.
Can we go back to the whole puppet board? Getting that set up.
We haven't done it yet.
Oh, I thought you said we were going to certain.
Are you this far along? Go, Coffee. Yep, just turn off. Nope, you're fine. Turn off the other layer. And we're going to work on the background layer, so make sure you're highlighting that. Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the puppet work. So the thing is, if we if we go to our puppet layer and we start moving his legs, underneath him, we're going to see the existing elephant legs, right? Because that's a picture of him underneath there. So on that layer, what we need to do is get rid of the elephant. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to use Content-Aware Fill to fill up the elephant on this layer with background and make it look relatively good. All right. Load the elephant selection again. So do Select, Load Selection, Elephant. Your marching ants are now around the elephant on our background layer. And in order to use Content-Aware Fill, which is really cool, Photoshop is smart. And in order to use it, we need to make these marching ants go out a little bit further into the background layer, because what it's going to do is sample that, and it's going to assume that whatever is in those background pixels that we expand to is what we want to fill. So it's going to fill all of this with the trees, and down here where it's sampling the sand, it's going to fill that with sand. So we need to modify our selection to be a little bit bigger right now. So Select, Modify, Expand. And in our dialog, we're going to say 5 pixels and OK. Notice how the marching ants bumped out. And because of that, when we tell it to Content-Aware Fill, it's going to have more information about the background to use. Okay, then we're going to go up to our Edit menu, and we're going to choose Fill. And in the options, the last time we used Fill, we did it with a color. Normally, this defaults to Content-Aware. If it isn't, make sure you change it to be content aware fill. We're going to leave our blend mode at normal, opacity at 100, and we're going to say okay. And is that perfect? No? Is it a good, decent starting point? Yes. Yes. Are you on your background layer? Yeah. Normally, if something isn't working, make sure you're on the layer that you intend to be on. So that's kind of a hot mess, but it's not bad, right? So we could go in with other tools and fix that up. However, we're not going to get that carried away. Just hit Command D to deselect your marching ants, and then turn the layer of the elephant back on, and it looks okay. I mean, if this were a real image, we would have fixed right here where I have the sand going up into the sky. I would have fixed this background layer much better. And if you want to, you know what, take some tools. Take the patch tool. Let's just do a rough job of this. It doesn't have to be perfect, but patch tool. Kind of fill it in a little bit, do a little bit better job of it. Okay, this is obviously not great because I have repetition. I see the same, whatever this white thing is, over and over again. But using a variety of tools, you can clean up this background pretty quickly. Where's my cursor? You can clean this up pretty quickly. All right, good enough. So I now have a sort of okay background, and then I'm going to turn my elephant layer back on above it so we can see the elephant. All right, now we're going to move off of that background layer. We're going to turn on the visibility of the puppet layer, and especially make sure that you activate the puppet layer. It has to be the layer that we're working on. And we're going to go into the puppet warp mode, but to first do that, we need to make this a smart object so that it always remembers its origins and we can come back to it if we need to. So on this layer, right-click and say Convert to a Smart Object. Notice that in this view, all we see is the elephant on a transparent background, but if we were to double-click and go into the Smart Object, it would still be masked out if we wanted to get back to it. But right now, it's just the elephant on a transparent background. Then we're going to go up to the Edit menu, and we're going to choose Puppet Warp to enter that mode. And we have the mesh over our elephant. Up in the top mode, or the option bar at the top, we can turn the mesh on or off. You can have it on or off, doesn't matter. I'm going to turn mine off. And we're going to now start by adding pins. All right, we are going to add a pin at the tip of the elephant's trunk. So add one there, and then we're going to drag from this pin, and we're going to see that all it did was lock down that point, and we can move the elephant all around. Now we're going to add a second point a little bit higher up by the tusk. And now when we pull on this point, whoops, I'm not trying to add a new pin. Stop it. Okay, why is it being difficult right now? Oh, I do love when technology does this to us. Evidently, I've added 2 pins down here. I did not mean to do that. Just like we did with the girl's head, and like we did in Illustrator, the places that we put pins are anchor points where other things can spin around. Yes? Are you on the puppet layer? Yes. And you're in Puppet Warp? edit Puppet Warp. You're sure you're on the puppet layer. Let me walk through the demo and then I'll come back and help you. Okay, so from here we're going to continue adding points. So the third point that we're going to put is going to be at this front leg of the elephant, up by the elbow. Then we're going to add one at the base of that foot. Then we're going to add one in the shadow of the right front leg, and then one at the base of the foot. And then we're going to add one in the shadow of the rear far away leg, and one at the base. And then number 9 is going to be more up here in the kind of in the hip zone, and 10 is going to be down at the bottom. 11 is going to be towards the top third of the tail, and 12 is going to be down at the tip of the tail. Now we should be able, and this better darn well work, to start moving these pins, and you can see how they anchor based on the pin before that. So I can make his leg come out here, that one come forward. You can kind of be doing the downward dog here in yoga. You can take the trunk. Oh, see, I have 2 points on my trunk, so I thought I was twirling his trunk up, and I'm doing something quite horrible to him. If you hold the Option key and click on a pin that you didn't intend to have, you can clip it off. So you can move his trunk. Stacking order, let's look at that. So take the tip of the tail and move it forward. And because of the stacking order, it came after all the rest. The tail swings in front of the elephant, if you will. With that same point still selected, the tip of the tail, look up at your option bar, and there's something called pin depth, and then it shows moving them up the stack or moving them down the stack. So click on that a couple of times. All it takes is one, and now that tail is swung behind the elephant. So we moved the pin up or down in the stacking order, and it changes, in this case, which way the tail goes. So you can, with a photo, and this absolutely amazes me, I'm still shocked by this. With a photo in Photoshop, you can create things that didn't really ever exist. You can change the way an animal is walking, or what it's doing, or how the tusk is up or down, just by moving your puppet points. It worked? Okay, good. Any other questions or concerns with the puppet work? Okay. If you want to save that for reference, you may. Otherwise, you may close that file. Whoops. Oh, when you're done, you do have to accept those changes or not. So at the top option bar, it gives me the undo, just say no to all of this, or say yes. And if you click that, you've entered into Puppet Warp. However, I want you to notice we made this a smart object, and because of that, Puppet Warp ends up being a smart filter below it in the layer stack here, meaning we can turn it off or we can change our mind. So it's non-destructive editing. We could go back to that original elephant at any point. Okay? All right.